In this video, there is a thread where I say that psychiatry is pseudoscience. Here is that thread. And they mention, now the original post here was edited. If I recall correctly, they originally said psychiatrist, so maybe they edited it to say psychologist after the comments covered hereafter, I think is the right word to say here. In the very immediate hereafter, as in soon, God willing. Psychiatry is pseudoscience. Can you imagine taking it seriously? And I actually got some support, which is rare. Usually I'm against the entire world. But here I have 4 people with me against thousands and thousands of non-freethinkers. Over here we have 2 people who wanted me to prove what I said, which I had no problem doing. I was happy to do that. So they said, how is psychiatry pseudoscience? I'll agree that there are a lot of quacks and idiots in the field, but that doesn't mean that all of psychiatry is pseudoscience. If that were the case, we wouldn't have effective medications like antidepressants. She says that antidepressants are effective. If they were effective, you wouldn't need to keep buying them, 1. 2, they don't even target the actual problem, which is the mind. What they target is the body, because they affect the body and thereby influence the mind, but they don't actually deal with the mind and in a solving way, just in an affecting way, in a masking of the mind's condition way. As in, you're actually sad, but the antidepressant can make you hyper, for example. I know there are different kinds. So if it makes you hyper, others can interpret your hyperactivity as happiness. Oh, he's so energetic, he's just a bundle of joy. No, he's just a drug addict. And that's called an atheist solution to sadness, being a drug addict. That's just making the problem worse, people. You're only prolonging and extending and exacerbating. So here, you also have this term, bipolar disorder. This is what people consider to be crazy because of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde attitude of some people. I've had this myself before. Because, yeah, I know some of my enemies will say, yeah, you're crazy, of course you are. No, what happened is that people thought I was crazy because I got angry and they didn't know why, when usually I wasn't angry. They would knock on my door and I was pissed off. Why? Because they were interrupting me doing something, but I didn't want to explain to them why, because, well, it's kind of personal. I think you can figure it out. But I was wrong to be angry at them because they didn't understand. I should have been considerate to their point of view of ignorance. So that wasn't a disorder on my part. I was just being angry because they were interrupting me, and they didn't understand what the problem was, so they thought I was crazy. When they don't when people can't understand you, they call you crazy. When it's actually they're ignorant and you're not crazy, you just have an issue, and everyone has an issue. Who doesn't? This world is full of issues. So yeah, so I'm challenged by this person, which I wanted them to do. I want people to challenge. I want people to ask for the proof. I want to give the proof. Here's the other person who said, do you have evidence that it's pseudoscience? The doctor in the clip is acting very unprofessional, but it does not invalidate psychiatry as a whole. Well, what validates it as a whole? It has never been validated in the first place. Circular reasoning. There are many mental illnesses out there. Mental illness, you're assuming that the brain is a mind. You haven't proven this. Out there, and psychiatric treatment is helping a lot of people every day to be drug addicts and to give money to corporations. That's helping them? No, that's making their lives worse. An example would be post-traumatic stress disorder, so-called, or stress disease, because they would call it a disease. Now, the term disorder is extremely vague. Anything that isn't perfection can be considered disorder. So that's vague. You know, psychiatry hides in a lot of ambiguity. It has a smoke screen of ambiguity, and it also uses some pseudo-intellectual terms like post-traumatic. Most people wouldn't understand that, what that means. So yeah. Later I say to that person, the criterion for something to be science is not helping people. Belief in astrology also helps people to cope. The onus is on your side to prove that psychiatry is science. It isn't science just because it is considered to be science. Psychiatry is based on the assumption that the mind is the brain, which is a lie. A lie that has a lot of propaganda for it everywhere. From Nintendo to Hollywood to people regurgitating assertions by the establishment without questioning anything like him. Here's proof for that atheist notion being a lie. The mind is free. Now I repeat this argument a lot because this argument proves macroevolution impossible, and it proves that spirits exist, and it proves that there is at least one God, and I have other arguments to prove who that particular God is. This is just a baby step, or one of them, because there's more than one way to prove that there's a God. So the mind is free to think. So are you with me so far, skeptics, who are skeptical of everything except psychiatry and skeptical of everything except atheist myths, which means you're not really skeptics? Are you with me so far? Do you agree that the mind is free to think? Because some of you have disagreed on this premise in your desperate attempt to undermine my argument. But in doing so, you have undermined your own credibility, because if you are not free to think, that means you're not a thinker, in which case you disqualify yourself from debate. I debate only with thinkers. Next step is, since it's free, that means it's not a slave. Are you with me? Are you with me? Contradictions can't be true. Are you with me? This is irrefutable. Ergo, not a slave to physics. So if it's free, that means it's not a slave, so it's not a slave to physics. If it were a slave to physics, that means it could not be free to think. Capiche? So the conclusion is that since it is not a slave to physics, it is not physical. In other words, since it is not totally predetermined by physics and subject to physics entirely, that means that it is not physical. Are you with me so far? Atheists refuse to accept this because it contradicts their atheist doctrine, their quasi-religious dogma that nature is all that exists. They believe this without any proof, and they cling to it mindlessly and irrationally because they are not the free thinkers they claim to be. They are not the skeptics they claim to be. So the drugs psychiatrists profit from. So with this argument, I prove that which is physical, like the brain, cannot be the mind, which is not physical, as I proved. In such few words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold on. Let's make it very clear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 words. In 19 words, I prove, as anyone else can do if they invest the time that I have into coming to this kind of argument. In less than 20 words? In less than 20 words, I think it was, I have proven that we are spirits with bodies, that when we die, as in our bodies die, that doesn't mean that we, the mind, dies. So I have proven there's an afterlife, and I have also proven by this argument that since we are spirits and we began to exist, the only logical origin would be a great spirit, a God. So at least one. So this proves there's a God. This proves that there's an afterlife. This proves atheism is wrong. This proves, what else does it prove? That psychiatry is wrong. So it's very useful, this argument. Oh, and it proves macroevolution is wrong as well. The myth that a species could evolve into a smarter or a dumber one by a physical process called genetic evolution. This refutes those things, and this proves the things that I said, that it proves as is either obvious or explained already. So the drugs psychiatrists profit from as the sellers, basically, because psychiatry is a scam. It's a modern scam to suck the money out of people who are suffering, making them into drug addicts if they aren't already, to enrich already fat, filthy, stinking rich corporations. They don't care about you. They want your money. That's why they want you to keep coming back and buying drugs. Since when does becoming a drug addict equals a solution to anything? So which focus on physical things, these drugs, don't even target the actual issue, but rather mask symptoms such as a drug that makes you hyper, so you are interpreted to be happy, and therefore you are no longer sad. Keep buying the drug. Thank you. Come again. So the same argument to him I gave to her. And then I told her I plan to do this video so she can have some more elaboration if she wishes, and also so she could see my other videos so she could see how she has been lied to about many things in her life. And I mentioned Tom Cruise because he is against, or was against, psychiatry. Although in his case by the Scientology cult. You could say my religion is a cult, but cult implies irrational, so you can't really you're not really warranted in saying that unless you can prove that, and no atheist has, so too bad for you, atheists. So this is Tom Cruise, not to be confused with Tom Cruise, inventor of the hover-round, K-R-U-S-E, no, not that guy, this guy, the Last Samurai guy. Yeah, so I was bored, so I was on YouTube, I saw videos of Tom Cruise questioning psychiatry. You should all see the video, Tom Cruise kills Oprah, it's beautiful. No offense to Oprah. She doesn't actually die, of course. So this got me questioning psychiatry, because before I never had anything to do with psychiatry. I never took drugs for that. Based on that, it wasn't part of my life, so I didn't have a reason to think about it really. And I was distracted by, worthless schoolwork and shit like that. Over here we have this guy responding to my argument. Now, later I tell him this: you ignored my proof that the brain is not the mind, which is the free equals not slave argument. Remember that? Or did you already forget it? Keep in mind that he ignored that argument. So he is afraid of the argument. He does not want to accept that which has already been proven. And this is how atheist delusion works and is. The mind is stored in the brain, he says, circular reasoning, and ignoring my argument, proving that wrong. So he lies, he repeats his lie, he reinforces what he believes without proving it, and then he says damage or injury to the brain has been documented to change people's behavior and personalities, which I address later. So it is not reasonable that medicine and substances are able to change how someone responds to an experience. Now, this also includes, I have to maximize the page so you can see the rest of what he said. Later, and he also says alcohol, for example. And he edited his comment from frustration because he couldn't defeat the argument. I mean, you ignore an argument. It's not like you didn't see it. It took up a bunch of the text space, so it's not like it was too small to see, even though it was concise. So I say this: no, the mind is not a part of the brain. You're confusing correlation. Here's a key. You're confusing correlation with causation. When the Nintendo 64 controller is broken, do you say the player is dead? Hey man, he can't express his intelligence in the system anymore, so he died. Look at the controller. Super Mario can't move anymore. He's dead, so the player is dead. Damn. He came into my house to play with me, and now he's dead because the Koopas beat him up. Because the Goomba touched him. Rest in peace, my friend. No. The controller is broken, the player is still alive. You don't have to express your intelligence to have it. But atheists confuse expression with existence of intelligence. Part 2 later, God willing.